And I know I said in previous videos that normally for me to do a video, something has to spark my mind. Something has to come to me, or somebody has to say something that, I think needs to be addressed. So with that, I think a day or two ago, someone made the comment in regards to some of my posts being more about live, love, laugh than leadership. So just because the post does not have the word leadership does not mean it doesn't relate. What people need to realize, there are more surfaces of leadership that has not been touched or defined. So you have to look at it from a broader standpoint. So most people follow this cookie cutter method or something like that, or these limits that they think leadership is in. Leadership is formless. It goes in multiple different directions. So with that, you have to keep in mind that a lot of things that you realize ties to leadership. You just have to acknowledge or see where it is. So with that, as I mentioned, some of them you never even scratched the surface of some of them. So think back. Let's reflect a little bit. So when did leadership really start for you, right? So when did that happen? So in retrospect, it really started at birth, when you were a child. So when you were a child and needed to be fed, someone fed you because you couldn't feed yourself. And you couldn't walk, someone carried you to get you where you needed to be. And in the process of learning, you stumbled and fell, but someone picked you up, mentored you, and you tried again. They provided you with your initial foundation of leadership. Now, this is the kind of leadership that your team needs from you. They need someone to be their voice, where they're allowed to speak for themselves. They need someone to pick them up when they fall and carry them when they cannot walk. They need someone who is humble, yet compassionate, but will still hold them accountable for their actions. Someone that's willing to be their shelter and protect them when they're not allowed to protect themselves. Leadership isn't always a rose. It's not the rose. Keep in mind, the stem has thorns. So it's two sides. It's not always a rose bush or a rose garden. But with that, again, there are thorns that cause complications, that hurt. So with that, there are wonderful sides of leadership, but there are also terrible sides of leadership. And you have to take the good with the bad. You have to take the friction that you get when you're trying to do something or stand up for somebody. You're going to get backlash in so many cases. So you have to be willing to embrace that. You have to be willing to embrace that. So with that, look at it as it goes in 360 degrees. How are you going to feel in that whole circle? So yes, I'm going to open the aperture, because you got to keep in mind and get away from this, it doesn't have the word leadership in it, so it does not apply. Everything that happens in life in some way, shape, or form that you do on a day-to-day basis outside of work, leadership is tied to it. Leadership is tied to it. Let's say, for instance, you go to Walmart, right? And you get frustrated for something. You have to exercise one of the leadership traits, judgment. Are you going to use your best judgment when you're responding to somebody that responded to something that you didn't like? Well, you implemented a leadership trait. And it goes on and on and on. So yes, I am going to open the aperture because I want you to see beyond the walls of leadership. Or should I say the fictitious walls that you put around leadership and make it inside this box and make it all nice and pretty. It's not always pretty. So not to mention, it has many facets to it. So either you don't recognize them or people are afraid to touch them. Here's an example for you. So many people are afraid to admit or accept that love is a part of leadership. As many feelings as that word contains, good or bad, it relates to leadership. You should love your team. Doesn't mean you have to like every one of them or like certain things about them, but you should love them. You should love, and honestly, with that, you should not be afraid to tell your team members you love them. I let my team know they are loved, they're cared for, etc. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. So don't get around this, oh, I have to act this way at work, or I have to present this image or this facade so people think that, I'm hard-nosed or whatever. No, you don't. There's nothing wrong with expressing love to your team. You express it to, those around you or close to you. Well, your team should be close to you too. You may not always get along, but the same thing with family. You don't always get along, and that's perfectly fine. But love is a pillar in leadership, and it is not going nowhere. Another part of leadership, a leadership trait that people don't connect with, is empathy. Empathy is something that people kind of stayed away from when it came to leadership because they figure it didn't equate in some way, shape, or form. They didn't see how it connected. Why should I have empathy towards this? Because, I'm not going through that, or I just don't understand, or how come they can't do this? Well, sometimes you have to step back and empathize a little bit, because it's correlated with job performance, and it's a critical part of intelligence and leadership effectiveness. Now, empathy, of course, is that ability to feel what another person's feeling. It gives you that feeling of kind of somewhat experience their emotions, and it allows you to put yourself in their shoes and see things through their lens. Doesn't mean you have to completely understand it, but it gives you a different lens to look through something, and maybe you can understand it a little bit. Let's say somebody came to work and say, I lost my sister or something like that. You never lost your sister, so you don't understand how it feels. But you can have an empathy to be compassionate and sympathize with them because of their situation. Because as a leader, it doesn't mean adopting everyone's emotions or adopting to everyone's emotions and trying to please everyone, because that's impossible. That will never happen. However, it does mean considering all your team's feelings along with other factors, and in the process, make sound, intelligent decisions. Because whether you want to believe it or not, you are a leader 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there's no way around it. And this has nothing to do with you filling a leadership position. That is completely irrelevant. Everyone has a level of leadership traits, and they carry a level of leadership principles. Even if it's their personal principles or personal traits, a lot of them ties to leadership. Everybody might not be able to effectively fill that position of a leader, and that's okay. But everyone has certain abilities that present leadership tendencies. So that is what I wanted to address today, because of that comment kind of stuck with me, because I need that person to understand, yes, some of my posts don't revolve around the word leadership, but it does not mean it applies. If you fail to see it, that means you're being narrow-minded and you're not opening up your mind to the message itself. Also keep in mind, a post only says so much. There's many directions it can go into. So just keep that in mind also. But again, that's what I wanted to address. I hope you all got some out of this. And again, I appreciate you all for taking the time to support this page that I had since November 2017. And so thank you for all that. I truly appreciate it. Depending on what time of day it is, enjoy your morning, enjoy your afternoon, enjoy your evening. Have a great day.